Chapter 9, Section 6, Day 2. We're going to write and solve polynomial equations, more of the same. Maybe they will have values greater than 1 in the A, probably, since that's what we've been working with, right? So we'll begin with our vertical motion model, which you used on the quiz. And so let's see if we can say it together. And I know you haven't used it a lot, but some of you look like you have it, right? H equals
negative 16t squared plus bt plus f.
Okay, do you all know what happens when when a walnut drops out of a tree? What's its initial velocity? Zero. Zero there. Oops. Okay, don't forget. So when you drop something, there is a dropped object model, you would remove the VT. But really, it's this, everything else is the same, right? You just remove the VT because when something is just dropped, it starts without an initial velocity, or its initial velocity is zero. Either way you look at it, it eliminates that middle term. There is still some starting height. On the quiz, some of you put your starting height over here. And this is the height anywhere along the way on the graph. So your starting height, go with the S, starting height, right? So in the case of the quiz, the walnut was at 55 feet high. So 55 feet here. This was wiped out by a zero. And then you want to know how long it takes it to hit the ground. So what is your H here?
Zero.
Zero. Just plug in a zero. Okay? So let's see if you can solve this one. Notice we have an A here that is 16. And the A is also what? Negative. Negative. So the first thing you could do would be good. Factor out the negative 1. Does 16, 38, and 5 have anything in common? Any GCF? Greater than 1? The 5 wrecks it, right? I mean, if the 5 were a 6, we could pull a 2 out of everything, right? But oh well, it's a 5. So the greatest thing we can pull out of all three of these numbers is negative 1. So pull it out and start factoring the rest of the problem there. Be careful with your signs. When you pull out negative 1, you have 0 equals negative times open parentheses, right? What's the new trinomial? Matthew?
16t squared minus 38 minus 4.
Good. So the signs have all switched to their opposites. But we still have the negative 1 factor carrying it along. There it is. So now we will try to factor what's left into two binomial factors. Notice that the 5 is a prime number, so that's nice. 16 is not, so you have some choices. We have a negative C. What does that mean for the signs in here? Positive and a negative. Okay. And 5 is prime. So I know you love to start with the first terms in parentheses, but because 5 is prime and 16 is not, sometimes I like to start with the last terms. And this is a negative middle term, so I'm going to try putting the negative factor being the larger of 5 times 1. The larger factor is 5. So I'm going to let that one be the negative one. And now, in my mind, I'm going to say 16 has factors of 16 and 1. That's pretty extreme. You know, 16 times 5 is what? 80. 50 plus 30 is 80. So that's pretty extreme. So I'm probably going to go with 8 and 2 or 4 and 4. And when you look at 38, which one are you thinking? Who thinks 8 and 2? Who thinks 4 and 4? I like 8 and 2 because what's 8 times 5? Isn't that close to 38?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so let's try it. If we put 8 here and 2 here, let's look at our OI. Outside, negative 40. Inside, positive 2. Negative 38.
I'm not nothing.
Okay, so what are the solutions? Haley, give me a solution.
Okay,
How about for this first binomial?
would be
Okay, very good. So we have the solutions of negative 1/8 and 5 over 2. So because this is a vertical motion model, what are these solutions? What units are they in?
feet.
These are T. Seconds. So which answer is the only reasonable answer? 5 over 2. 2.5 seconds, unless we are contemplating going back in time, right? The only reasonable answer will be 2.5 seconds or 5/2. So if you're in a real word problem, not just a random equation like this, you would want to choose the reasonable answer. Okay, here we go. We're looking at a problem from your book. Looking here, please. Oh, you can't see. We're looking at a problem from the book. And here we have a discus thrower. Okay? So a discus, like anything else thrown, forms the same shape we've talked about, which is a parabola. Parabola. Can you say that?
Parabola.
Parabola. Okay. This is on page 9 point. I'm sorry, 9 point. That's not a page. 595. I must be ahead a section. Yes, 595. Page 595. So the athlete throws it from an initial height of 6 feet. That's where it's released, 6 feet off the ground, with an initial vertical velocity of 46 feet per second. So write an equation that gives the height of the discus as a function of the time, t in seconds, since it left the athlete's hand. And after how many seconds does it hit the ground? So a perfect place to use our thrown object model, or projected object, or vertical motion, whatever we call it. And it is h equals
-16t squared plus dt plus s.
So let's see if we can fill in the known values. Substitute. I'm going to give you a second to try substituting the known values. Okay, so do we have a starting height, Aaliyah?
6 feet.
And where does that go? That's not starting height. That's your starting height. Good. Do we know how much time has passed? No, so the t's are going to stay t's, right? Do we know the initial velocity? What is it?
46.
So we plug in, and then ultimately, this is the first question, A. Can you write this model, right? But to answer question B, we want to know how long it takes it to hit the ground. So Jack, what do we need to add to this? Where? Good. So hitting the ground would be at 0 out there somewhere. And so here we have our quadratic equation, our trinomial, right? So Jack, what do we do first? Factor out the what? The negative? Okay, so 0 equals negative times, give me what we have now as a trinomial.
16t squared minus 40, 16.
Good. And so now we can factor the trinomial. Ooh, this is a more challenging trinomial. Ooh, I'm going to back it up. I'm going to back it up. Because what do you notice about all of these terms here? They're all divisible by 2, so we could have pulled out a -2. Is there anything larger that would go into all of these? Like, would 6 go into all of these? Hank, stop talking. Stop. No. Would 4 go into all these numbers? No. So we pull out a 2. -2. And now 2 goes into 16 how many times?
8.
So 8t squared minus
20.
minus
30.
good. Okay, so this is nice because 3 is a prime number again. So we only have one possible set of factors for the last terms, right? 1 and 3. Okay, so 1 times 3 in our last terms. This is a -c. This is a -c. So what does that mean for our signs? Positive and negative. And which one do you want to make negative? Based on this. The 3, good. Because we have a large negative middle. And it's a large negative middle, which means I usually, with my A now, I'm looking for more extreme factors, right? If my middle was just a value of -1t, I would look for middle of the road factors like 4 times 2. But because 23 is extreme, what are we going to go with? Do you see? 8 times 1, right? Where do we put the 8, Kaylin? Good. 8t. And then this would just be 1t, right? And if we look at the outside inside, we have 24. Negative 24 plus 1. Which is the negative 23 we need. Okay? So, we have a familiar solution, don't we? Kate, what's the solution?
It is.
What are the solutions?
Well, you subtract 1 and divide by 8 to 1/8.
And the second solution?
And then you add 3, divide by.
You add 3 and divide by 1. So it's 3. 3. Okay, so which answer is the answer?
3.
The only reasonable answer. And it is reasonable to think that a discus could fly for 3 seconds and land. That's a reasonable answer, so do check for reasonableness. Okay, a rectangle. Go ahead and pause the video and take this down, and then see what you can do with it. In geometry, it's always best to draw the picture. So if we have a rectangle, there we go, here's a rectangle. And so we need to plot these dimensions down. The length is 1 inch more than twice the width. The width is, we don't know. The area is 6 square inches. What is the width? What is the width? So we don't know the width. So how would we describe the width?
Twice the length.
W?
Yep.
Okay. So now how can we describe the length? Do you see? We don't want to just say L. We want to put all of this in terms of one variable.
Twice the width.
So the length is 1 inch more than twice the width. 2W, not just 2W, but plus 1. Good. And the total area is? 6 inches squared. Okay? So how do we use this to find the W? Well, do you know the formula for area? Good. A equals BH, or length times width, right? So where do we have known, where can we substitute, right, Haley? Good job. I'm going to drop the units for right now so that this will look like an equation, but you're right, it's inches squared. And then we have a base and we have a width. Okay, so what will you have to do? Kate Petosa.
I was paying attention. I was trying.
Cameron is expecting big things all the way from Utah.
Sorry, Cameron.
Okay, so is this equation ready to give me solutions?
You do?
No, it's not equal to
0.
0, so we have to...
Negative, subtract 6 from...
Okay, so if we subtract 6 from both sides, you can how does that look, Cameron? Is that good enough for you? I mean, Kate. Cameron, you're going to enjoy this video, aren't you? Okay, Kate, what else do we have to do?
You have to distribute the W.
I'm seeing a new side of Cassandra Wrestler right
We
now.
see this every time she eats sugar.
Good luck in Utah.
Okay, 8th grade, look at this. Seriously. You have to do all this multiplication before you can later factor. Do you see this? I love these problems. I love these problems. You will have problems like these on tests. You have to, look at this, you had to substitute a known area. John Renaga, up here. You had to substitute a known area. You had to then multiply, distributing a base and a height, subtract the area, so that you end up with what is now a beautiful trinomial, right? And now you can factor that. Go ahead and factor that and tell me what the solution for W is. Okay, here is a case of which number is prime, A or C? A or C? 6 is not a prime number. Okay. 2 has only 2 factors, 2 times 1. 6 has more than 2. Okay? It has 4. 6 is negative, so what does that mean for our signs? One's positive and one's negative. And now 6, the factors of 6 that will FOIL out to give us, well, which position should they be in so that we FOIL out to get a positive 1 in the middle?